we'll be covering not one, but two. This is a fair warning, okay? All joking aside, okay? We try to add our levity, but seriously, at this point, we are covering two cases today involving dismemberment and extreme brutality, and there are children involved. On both sides, all around. All right, so the first case we're going to be talking about today is about a young boy, guys, named Eldon Samuel. And if you have not seen anything about this, I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, because there's not a lot. But there is one video out there right now of his interrogation. It is downright shocking. What is it, Andy, an hour and a half?
It's about a 90-minute interview, and it's mostly interrogation footage. It's not a lot of filler.
Yes.
It's not a lot of... There's no talking head footage. There's no guys going back after the case.
It's tense. It's one of those interrogation videos where you just get sucked into it because it is interesting to see the way that he reacts, the way that he, backpedals and lies and goes back on things. So it's a very interesting video. But on the evening of March 24th, 2014, police responded to a call about a shooting at a residence in Coeur, Idaho? You think I said that right? Coeur d'Alene. I think that's it.
It sounds very New Orleans. It sounds very Louisiana.
It
like
does
a Cajun
sound
town.
very, yeah.
Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene, Louisiana. But it's not. It's in Idaho. But little did they know, they were walking into the home of a family so obsessed with zombies that they were actually preparing for the zombie apocalypse. Okay? And what police found inside the house was more horrific and bizarre than anyone could have ever imagined. And people imagined some pretty crazy shit because remember, these people were paranoid zombie hunters, and they made that known even in a short time that they were in the neighborhood. So brace yourself, guys. That's your last warning. So we're gonna start with Eldon Samuels, Eldon Samuels III, to be exact. So when police arrived at the house, they discovered that the 911 call had been placed by 14-year-old Eldon Samuel. They found him waiting outside, and he was covered in blood. Now, how he came to be covered in blood, they weren't quite sure. So for everyone's safety, deputies needed to secure the house and verify if anyone else was inside the home. As they approached the front door, it became pretty clear that they were entering a murder scene, with one officer being heard on body cam saying, quote, "I've got blood and footprints on the ground in here." So inside the house, they found the bodies of two males, one adult and one juvenile. And it became apparent that whatever happened was much more complicated than just a shooting. A large variety of weapons were found all around the house, and blood all through the hallway, the living room, the bathroom, and the bedrooms.
It really does. When they're that footage looks like
it's haunting.
It's like a horror movie. It looks like they're walking through a scene from The Devil's Rejects or something. You're just seeing weapons and blood and it's haunting, some of the body cam footage that they show there too.
Remember, this family, they really were somewhat afraid of zombies.
They were doomsday preppers, definitely.
Yeah, they were zombie doomsday preppers. But one of the most disturbing parts was it appeared that the deceased juvenile was attacked with a large machete and was found on the kitchen floor. The machete was found on the kitchen floor, not the juvenile. And the adult male had been shot multiple times in the head, 3 to be exact, as well as once in the stomach. Okay, so remember that.
That's more than a hitman right there. That's more than the to be sure.
That's more than a double tap. I know what you're getting at.
That's more than a double tap right there.
That's more than a double tap. Even Michael Cera might say that's an overkill. Mm-hmm. As deputies prepare to take Eldon for questioning, because he's the only survivor, the crime scene has piqued the interest of passerby and neighbors who are eager to help the police. And by gathering information from these neighbors, it appeared the house was being rented by Eldon Samuel Jr., who we will refer to in this podcast as Junior, but that's Eldon's dad. That could get a little bit confusing, but there's no other way to do it. And his two sons, the eldest, the survivor, 14-year-old Eldon III, and his younger brother, 13-year-old Jonathan, who was autistic and therefore required a bit of extra care. And this becomes important later as well.
When we do say autistic, we mean almost not like he's not severely autistic. He's not nonverbal. He can communicate. He can interact, but he is pretty far on the spectrum. So it's not like a lighter case. He has special needs, and that comes to play very far, like a lot in this story.
Yeah, he does require extra care. He does. And the home that they were living in was actually an emergency shelter for families and had just been recently reopened. The family themselves had only been there for around 6 months. Okay, they had recently moved away from their home in Modesto, California, where the boy's mother, Tina Samuels, still lived. So meanwhile, Eldon is taken in and questioned. His blood-covered clothes are collected for evidence. And an officer he knows from school was brought in to help with the questioning to make Eldon a little more comfortable. So there's footage of the interrogation on YouTube as we spoke about earlier, and it is a must-see for this case. If you guys have not seen this, when you get done with this episode, you need to go watch the interrogation. It's just one of those. It's just so creepy. It'll give you goosebumps, but honestly, it's amazing insight into what this child did and why. It really is.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit off camera, and it's a very detailed interview. You have a guy kind of giving a good psychoanalysis of what's happening, and he's kind of telling you like, oh, this might be a sign of this, and this might be what he's trying to cover up. So you get a lot of insight into the kind of the psychology of the interview. But there is no fat on that interview. It's you're almost watching the whole thing in real time.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of back and forth. There's no bathroom breaks. There's no like, oh yeah, we'll resume this later. Like there's
I mean, they do take a little break, but the camera stays on Eldon, and it's still interesting.
Not a long break. It's not we'll be back in a little while to let you just sit on this. It's like, we're gonna go out and talk real quick, and you just, is there anything else you want to tell us? We'll be right back.
Exactly. And just the way Eldon, he goes from one lie to the next. He's going back on things that he said. He's sitting there. He's fidgeting in his chair. And I have to give it to the officers. They were amazing at the interrogation. They really were. The way that they made him feel so comfortable at the beginning and the way they got him to open up throughout the process, they did a damn good job.
I don't think the one.
I don't know if they were all by the book, though. Right? They were a little bit edgy. They didn't touch him. But they were a little bit edgy.
They were a little pushy with some things. They're a little, not too much leading, but they know the truth at this point. It's more or less like they're not trying to trip him up and like, well, let's just see if we can get a confession. It's more or less like, we know what happened. We just need you to tell us. So all the questioning is, it does get a little aggressive sometimes. They want him to act out things. They want him to show them what happened. And you can tell they just make him more and more uncomfortable as the interview goes on. It starts very comfortable. I couldn't tell if that was a resource officer from his school.
It was a resource officer that he actually remembered from school. He actually knew him. Apparently they had some type of conversation when he was at the school, and he let him use the handcuffs. Something about handcuffs. Maybe he gave him a set of fake handcuffs or something like that. They had some quick conversation about handcuffs at the very beginning, and I can't remember what it was.
Because the officer also knew his brother. He had met both of the boys in the term of school or using resource officer stuff. He had met both of the boys at this point.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure out what happened, right? So Eldon starts by telling the police that his father, Junior, had been outside shooting at zombies. And when he approached his father and told him to go in, and then he approached his father and told him to go inside, at which time Eldon claims that Junior got mad and pushed him. But he has trouble, and even in the interview right then, he has trouble recalling where he was pushed. So the officer's like, did he push you in the chest? Did he push you on the arm? And just the way that the way he's like, it was kind of like here.
Well, he says he pushed and then he hit me, and they're like, "Where did he hit you?" And he's like, "In my left side, But he's just like all over, and they're like, if he hit you, that would be a bruise. Like with the force you're saying, like, is there a bruise? Like the officer even says, "Do you want to show me? Is there a bruise? You can show me."
Yeah.
Like if he hits you, if there's a mark, show me.
Right.
And he doesn't. He just he just keeps doing this, and then just tries to say like. And then, like, he just kind of just tries to push it off.
Exactly. Like, he's just like, are you buying this yet? It's here. Just trust me.
It's Tommy Boy. It's not so much here, but right here, like right in here. It's definitely the Tommy Boy thing. It's not here.
He's very unsure. But then he claims the struggle led them inside, and there he picked up another one of his dad's guns, because his dad allegedly had a gun in his hand, which... None of the neighbors corroborated, by the way. They said that his dad was standing outside, and they claimed that the father, Junior, was strange. That's all they said. They said, you wave at the guy, he doesn't wave back. He always looked irritated. He was a chain smoker. But never did they say he was firing some gun in the front yard.
They only said there was a disturbance in the front yard. They didn't recall any gunshots being heard before the ones right before the 911 call.
Exactly.
The neighbors do corroborate and say, I mean, they were outside in the yard and they were arguing, but he was out there just acting weird.
Right. But Eldon claimed that the struggle led them inside, where he picked up another one of his dad's guns in self-defense, obviously, a .45, I believe he said it was, and shot his father in the stomach in an attempt to stop his dad from beating him. So
or
now
just killing him.
He's changing his terminology, saying that his dad was beating him. This kid has no marks on him. Nothing. No evidence of physical abuse whatsoever.
He kept saying he was going to kill me.
I mean,
he was going to kill me.
He was going to kill me.
He was I shot him in the stomach because he was going to kill me.
Right.
And like, how was he going to kill you? Well, he said he was going to kill me, but did he do anything? Well, he said he was going to. He just keeps repeating himself. He will repeat the question and repeat the same answer.
You can tell he didn't think it through. He just thought that they were just going to take his word for it, and that'd be it. But he then claimed that his father, Junior, started crawling towards his younger brother Jonathan's room. Jonathan was apparently hiding under the bed in his room, terrified of the whole situation. Naturally, I mean, my God, like I can't imagine what was going through this kid's head. I mean, he's 13, right? So he's not a child. Now he is autistic, but I mean, he's not a small child. Like he understands what's happening here.
He's grown up in this environment to where he's not sure of what is going on. So yes, he does perceive things differently, but this is I think they said something about Jonathan. He was a type who liked small spaces. When he got overwhelmed or when he got overstimulated, he liked to hide. He liked to go into a tight spot.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, he liked to go into a closet or under the bed. So that's where he immediately went as soon as drama starts.
Yep. So he claimed that Junior was crawling towards Jonathan. So Eldon goes into Jonathan's room and starts to try and coax Jonathan out from under the bed. So he picks up the mattress and tries to grab Jonathan out from under the bed. But at this point, when asked how Jonathan reacted, Eldon suddenly can't remember anything. And once the detectives make him feel a little more comfortable, he suddenly recalls that Junior was crawling towards Jonathan with a loaded shotgun. So that's why he's trying to get Jonathan at this point. He claims that he's trying to save his younger brother from his dad's wrath because his dad has a shotgun. And he says that Junior's crawling towards Jonathan with this loaded shotgun, right? He's been shot in the stomach, but he's still crawling to kill his 13-year-old son, allegedly here. And that Junior shot Jonathan twice with the shotgun. That's what Eldon said at this time.
And one
which
thing
he somehow, this is the craziest part though, he somehow did not see this happen.
Yeah, I don't
know. He can't put anybody where, well, was your dad by the door? Well, I wasn't there. He says he claimed he didn't see it happen. He claimed that Jonathan was shot in the leg, and he only knows this because he heard him yell, "Ow, my leg," from outside. Eldon apparently ran outside because he didn't want to hear any more of the screams, and so he could get some fresh air.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking about too, he's also at this point in the interview, he has stated multiple times that my dad was on this medication, and when he takes his medication, he acts crazy, and he took these pills and he was on his medication. And I think they do talk a lot about his dad's drug use and his different medications that he was on. I think he was saying he was taking Ambien or something like that.
I think most of it was pain medication.
Yeah,
honestly.
He was on some opioids, some muscle relaxants, but I think he was taking sleeping medication. That's what made him crazy when he would take it once a month or something like that.
Yeah.
But he kept saying repeatedly throughout the beginning of the interview, well, he took his medication and he was acting crazy, and that's why he was outside with the shooting zombies, and it's the medication. It makes him angry and violent, and he just kept saying that at the beginning of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. His dad was a career mechanic, and he had some pretty bad, I guess, injuries throughout his years that has caused him chronic pain, probably stooping under cars and things like that, right? So he was on these pain medications for years, honestly. So Eldon, according to him, goes outside, gets some fresh air. Once everything calms down, he calls the police. That's his story, right?
Once the noise
okay, so at this point, officers or anyone who's listening and paying attention knows that something is up, right? The story doesn't make any sense. Where does the machete play in that was found in the kitchen covered in blood? Why are there multiple gunshot wounds in Junior's head, etc.?
Right? Why are you covered in blood?
Why are you covered in blood?
Covered in blood when we found you.
Exactly. Exactly. So the officers are like, okay, hold on. We got to take a break because obviously this kid's not going to be forthcoming about this. We got to regroup. So during this time, Eldon, I guess he thinks like they're being more lax on him because they're not pressing him and they're actually believing this shit. So he asks the detectives when he's going to be able to go back to his house and get some of the stuff he needs. And what kind of stuff? They ask him, and he says, like my Xbox and GTA 5.
Yeah, because he kind of stops.
And then that's where the blame of video games comes in.
They just immediately, his questioning switches so quickly when they tell him, like, we're going to take a break for a second, and he stops talking about everything, and he's just like, so where am I going to live now? Do I get to go get my stuff, like my Xbox? And it almost made you think
what
of,
he
like,
wanted.
It made you think of like the Brendan Dassey on how to catch a murderer or catching a murderer or whatever it was from Netflix. Right. Because you almost think it's like, do you not understand what's happening? Because the cops have to question. They're like, do you not understand what's happened? Like, do you not? Because they have to pause and be like,
right.
You're not getting your Xbox right now. Is that a real question, or are you?
You really don't understand. But he also asks about his mom at this time. So that could be a little more insight into his frame of mind. Maybe he's thinking like, I'm going to go get my stuff and go live with mom now, because that's what he wanted in the first place. He just had this.
That was his end goal. Was to get back to live with his mom.
Yeah. And while he's talking about his mom, Eldon actually shows his first signs of emotion at all about this thing. And that's when he starts to talk about her. He began to cry for the first time that night when he started to tell police how his father had been abusive to his mother before the two separated. But the couple's past relationship was shrouded in violence and abuse both ways from what it sounds like. Although according to who you ask, you'll get different answers as to who was the aggressor in the relationship. If you ask the in-laws, they're going to say that, their in-law was the aggressor and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So who knows about that? They were a toxic couple from what it sounds like.
And you do see Junior's father ask questions about his ex-wife. And he's well, I think she was the aggressor. And I know my son's got problems, but I think she was the one. And
the grandfather of Eldon states that the mother was the aggressor, but again, against his son, right?
Yeah.
So, you take it with a grain of salt. But we do know Eldon's mom had previously spent time in jail on child cruelty charges, and both his mom and dad had taken out restraining orders on each other. Mm-hmm. And they both struggled with drug addictions, different types, but still drug addictions. Like I said earlier, Junior had worked as a mechanic, so, he was on the pain meds, and a pediatrician did confirm that the children had suffered from neglect, specifically Eldon, who was often malnourished. He had poor dental hygiene and was very quite frequently absent from school. So
when they did say about his mother having like a child cruelty charge too, that was one thing they weren't able to say, like, we don't know if it's on Eldon or Jonathan, but she like willingly accepted a child cruelty charge, mm-hmm. which included like some probation time or something. But right. she just willingly, she was like, yeah. Like, so it's like he's had like a tumultuous relationship with both parents.
He has. And you know how it is. It's kind of like the human condition. You kind of get used to what you have, and you miss what you had. And I think that was kind of built upon in this constant turmoil that Eldon was getting into with his father. Even though if he had lived with his mother the whole time, he had probably been fighting with her too. It's kind of just that rebellious stage. Plus, he's learning from them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, back to the story. The detectives go over it over and over again, trying to convince Eldon to just come clean about what really happened. And it's honestly getting difficult for Eldon to keep up with everything that he said, especially after this break, versus what actually happened, not to mention what the detectives are telling, implying, and asking him, because, they have some pretty damn good evidence to go on. But eventually, Eldon drops a bombshell and confesses that it was him and not his dad who attacked Jonathan.
That's a hard part.
And the shit hits the fan right here, because that changes everything, right? He goes on to say that he has hated Jonathan for years and believes he is the reason his dad is on so many medications. Mm-hmm. So he blames his dad. He blames Jonathan for his dad's behavior. He also blamed Jonathan for his parents' separation.
Yeah, he said because his brother required so much extra attention, so much extra effort that it strained them, and then his dad would only focus on his younger brother.
And apparently he's felt this way for a long time, because he confessed to a previous act of violence towards Jonathan. He says that when he was 6, which would make Jonathan 5. He stabbed Jonathan in the back with a kitchen knife. Now, he was never caught for this act, or at least nobody backed this up. His mother didn't say anything, didn't confirm this. Whether or not this happened, it's really not clear. But it was becoming evident, though, that Eldon harbored some serious resentment towards his little brother and blamed him for literally everything wrong in his life. So they start asking him why. They want him to come out with it. Why did you shoot your brother? And it almost seems like at this point he kind of starts to realize that he's slipping. This facade that he thought he was holding up is falling very quickly.
It's kind of when the questions start to get when we talk about getting a little bit more aggressive. It's kind of at this point where they kind of drop the act. They're like,
right,
Eldon, if you shot your dad in the stomach with a 45 from that close, he's not going to get a shotgun, drag himself down the hallway,
right,
shoot your brother twice, and then you're going to shoot him 3 times.
Yep.
Eldon, none of this is making. And they kind of just come out right and say it like, so you went back in and you shot your brother, didn't you?
Yeah.
And he kind of just is like,
exactly.
Yeah.
They call him on his bullshit, and
he just breaks. He's just like,
he does. He flips, and he confesses to using the machete to strike Jonathan. Just out of the blue, comes out, skips all the gun shit, confesses to using a machete to strike Jonathan because he wouldn't come out from under the bed. The cops are caught a little off guard right here, because remember they were asking why he shot Jonathan, not why did you hit him with a machete. So this kind of just opens the floodgates, and the truth starts pouring out. Young Jonathan was not just shot with a shotgun, but also multiple times with a 45 for a total of 10 shots. He was also slashed across his arms, legs, and head with a machete dozens of times. And then Eldon also ended up using a knife on him, which we'll get to later.
That was the thing. They would never they would never directly say like how many shots. Like they would never say your brother's been shot this many times or
right.
He had. They're like, did you shoot your brother? I think that's one of the biggest questions. It was so bombshell. They're like, so did you shoot your brother? And his response was, with what? Like that's his. They're like, wow. No, we asked you if you shot your brother.
Yes or no.
And his response was, which gun? He says it again.
Yes.
With which gun? Like he's clearly like, what do you know? Which ones? Which bullets did you find? Like, you can see the moment where he's just like, which gun? Like exactly. It's just a sad moment across his face. But
he wasn't done explaining either. He apparently felt the need after he had slashed his brother with the machete on all of his limbs and his head. He felt that he needed to stab him multiple times. I'm guessing in the head as well. I think this is kind of where that zombie defense comes in, because the defense tried to say later that, well, the head injuries were because he was afraid that they would come back as zombies. That was more of a mercy thing. It's just, it's call it what it is. It's a gross overkill. Mm-hmm. And just, it was proof that Eldon absolutely hated Jonathan. That's all this is. And poor Jonathan bled to death from his injuries and died sprawled across his father's lap. Eldon even said that John was crawling towards his dad as he continued to attack him. That's part of the reason I think why he was continuing to hit him. Because
Jonathan was going to his dad.
Yes.
And he was mad at both of them. That's one of the that's a really dark part of the interview. When the cops start making him, they're like, we said they'd make him act things out.
Yeah.
This is when they start doing that. They start saying like, no, show us how you hit him with the machete. Stand up, show us how you did it. Face the wall. And at first he's like, chop, chop. And they're like, is that how hard you hit him? Because it doesn't seem like that. And then he kind of pauses, and then you see him just like 2-hand base, just axe, just start chopping. And it's you can see the cops even kind of like being like, that's not what we were hoping for, but you're really showing us what you did.
Yep. Yeah, it's brutal. And he says he continued to hit Jonathan until he was quiet and completely stopped moving. At which time, then he walked outside and called the police. So he left a little bit out in the first run through, a little bit.
Yeah, it's a rough draft. It was a rough draft.
It was a summary.
It's the Cliff Notes.
The officers at that time obviously are blown away. So they try to gauge Eldon's state of mind by asking how he felt about what he had done and why he had done it. And of course, he claims that he had no remorse. He says they were bad people and he was only defending himself. But again, the questions are posed over and over regarding Eldon's frame of mind and remorse until Eldon finally begins to get upset when he talks about shooting his dad. He finally says he feels bad that he had to shoot his dad, not Jonathan. And I feel like at this point, it's like it almost doesn't mean anything. You've already said that you have no remorse over and over and over again. You've said that you're glad they're dead. And then it's almost like, God, I guess you want me to say I have remorse. I have remorse.
Yeah, I feel bad.
That's what it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
because the questions they lead him with of what you felt and why you would do this, and like, if your dad was abusing you, like if he was attacking you, how regularly was he? Did you decide you were going to do this months ago? Did you decide? And he just keeps saying like just tonight, because he's trying so hard to like build this self-defense case. He even straight up says, he's like, that's self-defense, right? Like he says it in like almost like that's what I'm hoping for. It's a self-defense, right?
That's right. Right.
My dad killed my brother and he was going to kill me, so I had to kill him. And like he jumps on a like, that's self-defense, right?
Right.
And they're like, we'll talk about that later. Like it's
exactly.
That's when the cops start saying like, so he pushed you and you shot him? That's like, the questions start getting more and more like, really?
Exactly. So guys, brace yourselves. Let's get into what actually happened. So the altercation in the front yard does seem to track. That does seem, I don't know why, but Junior was out in the front yard, and I guess Eldon didn't like that. I don't know, maybe he was causing some type of disturbance in the neighborhood, and Eldon was trying to talk him down, and then he got frustrated, but I don't know. Either way, they took the altercation inside. Eldon did shoot his dad in the stomach, and JR Jr. was crawling to his son Jonathan's room, but not to shoot him with a shotgun, but to protect him from Eldon. Which, while he's crawling to Jonathan's room, Eldon then shoots his father 3 more times in the head once he comes through Jonathan's room into the threshold there.
He kind of like, he crawls into Jonathan's room. He tries to like prop himself up to almost like prepare for Eldon to come in the room. And as soon as he like gets up against like the dresser, Eldon just comes in and shoots him twice in the face, I believe.
3 times. 3 times. And then he turned his attention to Jonathan. And this is when he is trying to coax Jonathan under the bed. See, there are little nuggets of truth here, but the reasoning is what he lied about initially. He's trying to coax him out from under the bed. Eventually, Eldon gets so enraged that he grabs the shotgun and fires 2 shots at Jonathan while he's under the bed. Then grabs a .45 and shoots him another 8 times. And that is where the 10 shots come. That's where the 10 shots come from that they found on Jonathan.
Wasn't it a double barrel shotgun or something? That's why
I think it was like a pump. Okay, it just had 2 left.
He's like, it's 2 shots. So.
From the one they showed in the video in the interrogation looked like a combat pump shotgun. Like, it might have just had 2 shells in it.
Yeah, I just remember him saying, it only had 2 shots. So I was like, was it like a double barrel boomstick or something? But...
So, instead of reloading, you just decided to switch weapons. Because he had the .45 still that he'd shot his dad, right? It probably could have had a 15-round clip for all we know. And, but somehow, Jonathan gets shot 10 times and somehow still, miraculously, starts to crawl towards his father. And this is when Eldon proceeds to finish his little brother off with a machete. Yes. Hacking at his arms and legs until he can't move. And then once he stops moving, starts stabbing him multiple times in the head. I think 3 or 4 times in the head as well. And like I said earlier, this is where the defense tried to use like, oh, well, he was trained to fight zombies. Okay, well, this is a 13-year-old kid. Yeah. This is not a zombie.
Yeah, because they're trying to see how he was hitting him, because they keep telling him like, well, how did you shoot him? Show us. How did you bend down? Did you not look? Did you just shoot? Because they have like the bed, and he's flipped the mattress basically off the bed, so it's just like open like slats. Yeah, and that's what he's swinging through. He can see him. He's trying to get him out, but he's kind of saying like, well, my brother's always afraid of me. He's always afraid of me. Like,
I bet
you're just shot you just shot your father in front of him. He's terrified.
Yes. And Eldon would be brought in. He'd be brought to court, and he was tried for the murder of both his father and his brother. Murder is just an understatement for this. This is one of the most gross overkillings I think we've ever covered on the show, honestly, especially by a child.
On a 14-year-old, on another child,
on another sibling. It's just, god damn, it's dark. The judge dropped Junior's murder from first to second degree because he couldn't prove that there wasn't a conflict between Junior and Eldon at that time. But for the death of Jonathan, Eldon would face first-degree murder charges. And he would be tried as an adult and was found guilty of all charges. I think when he was finally tried, he was 16 and tried as an adult.
Which is kind of crazy to think in the legal system of that. It's like, well, you committed the crimes as a 14-year-old, but you didn't go to trial until you were 16, and then they tried you as an adult.
He pleaded when he was 16, pleaded with them, talking about how he was a different person now, and what he did was awful. But I mean, God, dude, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. You can't excuse it. You have to be separated from society forever. Yeah, if you have the capability to take it to that extent, I think.
I love when they ask him too. They're like, "What do you think should happen to you? What do you think should happen to someone who just did this, Eldon?" And at first, he's just like he doesn't say anything because he's already first said like, "I just want to go back to California. I just want to go live with my mom."
Yeah.
He's like, "Can I go live with her?" And then when they ask him, they're like, "What do you think should happen?" And that's when he like kind of switches again, and he drops his head and he says like, "Die. They should die because they're bad. They're a bad person." And they're like, "Okay, so you think you should die?" Like they switch immediately from like you thought nothing should happen to you to now like immediately you should get the death penalty. It's a weird transition to show that he does not really grasp all the gravity of what happened.
I think he realized he was given the wrong answer, Andy.
Yeah, that might be a thing too.
I think he realized, not home. No, not home.
I shouldn't.
Dead. Should I be killed? Yeah,
I shouldn't get extra dessert.
He's just almost like that. He's just like, at this point, he still seems just socially not there, psychologically not there. He's just still telling them whatever he's got to tell them in hopes of getting out of there. Like that cop did a great job making him think that he was his friend because Eldon truly believed that he was going to get out of there. I really do think so.
Even when Eldon starts like defending himself of like why he felt these ways about his brother or why he had so much rage, even when he's like defending himself, the cop can't even make sense of it. He's like,
yeah.
So your dad, he's like, well, my dad would go to the store and he would buy him a candy bar and I told him not to eat it. And they're like, but he ate it. And they're like, well, why did you tell him not to eat the candy bar? He's like, well, because I wanted to eat it.
Right.
And he's like, well, did your dad buy you a candy bar too? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, if you had a candy bar and you wanted your brothers too,
you see,
he's like, wouldn't that be fair? He's like, it'd be good for me. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, he shouldn't have it. I should have it. He's a bad person. I should get his. It would make me happy. And the cop, these cops just being like, dude, you're not helping. You're not doing anything good right now.
He could not comprehend. I don't think he could really accept his brother's condition. And he was probably one of them siblings was like, they give you the benefit of the doubt all the time, right?
Because you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. You're faking it. You're doing this because, people with autism, a lot of people don't show signs. You can't tell.
Everyone presents
differently. That's right. There's different levels of the spectrum. I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about, but I have seen quite a few people with autism, and most of them you can't tell unless they tell you, or unless you witness something strange. But anyways, this case, it proceeded to a very lengthy jury trial, and the defense theory was that Eldon killed his father in self-defense, like I said, and that he killed his brother in a rage, committing manslaughter, not murder. Eldon's mother, Tina Samuels, said in court that Junior had trained and prepared Eldon for a zombie apocalypse and blamed his behavior on the way that he was brought up. Samuel's public defender asked her to explain exactly what her husband trained her son to do to zombies, and she said, quote, to shoot them in the head and chop off their head. That's the only way to kill a zombie, end quote.
It's so weird. They ask Eldon at one point because of the zombie stuff. They're like, do you think your dad really believed the zombies were coming? And he's like, I think so. And he's like, do you really believe that the zombie apocalypse is coming? And he kind of says like, yeah, it's probably coming.
It's probably coming.
They're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, all the stuff coming out of Ukraine and it's probably going to happen. And it's
you could tell weird. He'd been fed some.
He had listened to his dad. He had
some
listened
crazy
to some rants, and he was on some fringe topics and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they ask him directly, do you believe the zombie apocalypse is coming? And he's like, probably.
It's crazy. But regardless of the ridiculous defense, the jury found Samuel guilty of second-degree murder for killing his father and first-degree murder for killing his brother. The district court sentenced Samuel to a unified term of 15 years with 10 years fixed for second-degree murder of his brother, and a concurrent life term with 20 years fixed for first-degree murder. I'm sorry, that was of his brother. The first one was his father. The second-degree murder was his father. So he got 10 fixed years for his father, 20 years fixed for his brother. So he's doing at least 30 years. And Eldon Gale Samuel III is currently serving his time at the Idaho Correctional Institute, and he'll be eligible for parole in 2038. Something else interesting about the case is that he was immediately put into an adult prison. They deemed him too dangerous to be put in with juveniles, and the local juvenile detentions would not have him. He's like, no way we're having this kid in there, and so he had to be locked up with adults, but he was separated until the age of 21.
Yeah, they realized that's one of the reasons the first and second degree thing, because they couldn't decide if his father was really planned, because they're like, okay, you say he pushed you and he had a gun and you may have felt, but you still overkilled him.
Right,
there's no defense for his brother. They're like, why did you kill your brother? And you did it so gratuitously. It was not you didn't shoot your brother one time like your dad. You took out years of rage. So that's why they were like, you maybe get second degree on your dad because he does have histories of violence. He does have histories of drug abuse. And
Right.
But yeah, there was definitely, they coaxed it out of him too during the confession of like, how long have you hated your brother? And he's like, years, maybe 9, maybe 5 years, like
maybe 9, maybe 5.
They're like you're 14. You've been hating him since you were 5 years old. They're like, you could know.
Well, and then that's where the story came up about him stabbing him. He's like, yeah, I stabbed him when I was 6. So he's trying to say, for at least the last 8 years, I've hated my brother. So he's.
Yeah, but that's just you're digging yourself a more.
I was about to say that's even more premeditated.
Yeah. Man, you really planned this.
At this point, he just, he was saying whatever he had to, like I said. But
there is one thing too we didn't even mention. There's a third child in this family. Like Junior does have an older son.
Yeah.
Who is not involved in this, so that when they have to start asking other family
that's why I didn't bring him up.
Yeah, they're like, because that's one of the reasons when they go back to his elder brother, the eldest brother's like, I mean, he never beat me. He never pushed me. He didn't like that, because that's the only surviving son. And the eldest son is like, nope, he never threatened me.
No.
He never tried to hurt me. Like, he was weird. He was kind of strange, but
yeah, you just had a perfect cocktail of bad influences, and just a tough age too. I mean, not blaming this on being a teenager. Trust me,
we all had horrific teenage years.
It was tough, but none of us did that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a perfect cocktail. It was a little bit of nature and nurture, I think. He did have 2 somewhat violent, conflicting troubled parents. He was kind of left to his own devices a lot at home. There were weapons everywhere. He's constantly being fed things about, how the world's going to be taken over. It's going to end. I'm sure his paranoia was through the roof. And he's staying out of school, so there's not a lot of other influences in his life. So, and I'm sure the kid didn't have the best time at school. I know at one point in time during the interview, they asked if he was bullied, if he was hit at school. He said yes. He wouldn't go into specifics. I'm sure the kid had a rough go of it, but it does not excuse this. And honestly, he's up for parole, 2038, I said. I don't think he should be out. I just don't think. I don't know, man. Is there any redemption for somebody like that?
I really don't know, because it's like you want to give like teenagers, and you know that their brains aren't done developing. You know that they have so much left to learn. They don't grasp the finality of decisions.
I know it seems harsh, but god damn.
Yeah, it's
man,
like, but
it's like
this wasn't. That's the thing. It wasn't a spur of the moment, a passion killing. It wasn't we got into a big fight one time.
No,
we
planned it.
Killed, like, it was a premeditated overkill of a sibling at a young age. So it's hard to ever think it's like, was this just your teenage hormones and emotions coming? You thought about this and you wanted it to happen.
And
like
you
wanted
planned
your
it.
brother dead.
Yes. It brings to mind Eric Smith. Obviously this was before you came on the show, Andy. Me and Lauren did this years ago, but Eric Smith was a 13-year-old boy.
I remember him.
A little freckled-faced kid. He's out now. Little redheaded kid. He's out now. He killed a 6-year-old at 13. He killed a 6-year-old. A random 6-year-old went to school with him, pulled him into the bushes, and just stabbed him to death. And this is so much like that. And Eric Smith is out. I mean, and that happened in the U.S.
Yeah.
So didn't happen? I'm pretty sure it did happen in the U.S. And as well as this one, obviously. But man, brutal case. And I guess if Eric Smith can walk free, but I mean, this kid did it to his own father and his own brother.
And with the Eric Smith case, they didn't have the overkill. They did not have the did this and you kept doing it.
It was almost like Eric Smith was beaten so much and taken advantage of and bullied so much. He was just so sick of being the victim that he wanted to
he just wanted to take some power.
He wanted to take the power.
He wanted to feel like he was the one in charge. He was the bully. He was the powerful one.
Yep.
But this kid, like they kept saying, like, this is overkill. You didn't just kill your brother.
Gross overkill.
You mutilated your brother. You brutalized
Gross overkill. Him. All right. Well, like I said, guys, there's not a lot out there on this, and there's still not. But there is, like I said, that amazing interrogation video on it on YouTube. It's definitely worth the watch if you're interested in this case. It's some crazy insight. So let's take a deep breath, okay? Because we're about to dive into another tragedy, and this one just happened. It is still being investigated, and it's still they've only been to court once over this. It is still very, very new, but I think I have an idea what happened. I think I have a pretty damn good idea what happened. And but this is the story of Sequoia Samuels, okay? Not to be confused with Samuel. In the early morning hours of June 15th, an extensive search was conducted by local and federal agencies north of Memphis, Tennessee. This was in a desperate attempt to find a missing 4-year-old named Sequoia Samuels. But sadly, just a day later, the search would be called off, with the discovery of little Sequoia's body just feet from her home. But with the state she was found in, police said it was impossible that she went missing on the 15th, but instead they believed that she had been missing for weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so immediately, police returned to Sequoia's home, full of questions for her 24-year-old mother, Brittany Jackson, and her 21-year-old boyfriend, Jalen Hobson. Now, according to the police affidavit in Jackson's case, she initially informed investigators that she had been at home the day before with a total of 4 children, okay, 2 of her own and 2 who were relatives of her boyfriend, obviously one of those children being Sequoia. She stated that she had given Sequoia water and then dozed off on the couch, while Hobson, her boyfriend, later arrived home and went to sleep himself.
That's always the most convenient excuse.
They're just asleep. They're just asleep.
Parents that kill their children. I dozed off. I was asleep.
I just fell asleep.
You know, kids be kids. And
hey, I didn't say anything about parents killing children. Quit ruining
I'm just
stuff.
saying, like, it's always the easiest excuse whenever a child gets hurt and the adults are like, "Oh, I dozed off. Oh, I don't know." Like, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a good alibi. It's really not. So later, Brittany claimed she was woken up by a text from a family member, and the text was saying that her front door was wide open. And it was at this time that they realized that they couldn't find 4-year-old Sequoia. So a few side notes here. Brittany lives in a single-story apartment complex where most of the other residents are her relatives. Seriously, a lot of her family lives in that immediate area. So when they text, they're probably like looking out their door and they're like, what the hell? Brittany's door is open. Let's text her and tell her. But they had no idea what was going on behind Brittany's walls. Also, Sequoia had special needs, including a feeding tube, and she reportedly went missing in the middle of the night.
Again, it's like we both have children. We both have had children around the same ages and stuff. If you have 4 children at home, you're not sleeping on the couch when you're watching 4 children, especially like a 4-year-old with special needs and who has to be monitored. You're not sleeping on the couch. They're never that quiet. And if you can get woken up by a text, you get woken up by those children.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So Sequoia had special needs, and she also went missing in the middle of the night. But straight away, Brittany had a story for this. She says it was Jalen. Just throws her boyfriend under the bus right away. She alleged that weeks ago, he had beaten Sequoia so bad that she became unresponsive. Weeks ago, okay? Now she's saying this. Brittany claims she rushed to Sequoia's side, and Jalen tried to revive her. But she was gone already, and there was nothing that they could do. So in a news interview, Sequoia's paternal grandmother said that when she would see Sequoia, that she would cry and not want to go home with her mother and couldn't understand why, okay? She also said that Sequoia would often have bruises and burns on her when she visited her. Jalen, of course, denies all accusations and says that he hadn't seen Sequoia since June 11th, days before the report was filed. But police say this is impossible due to the advanced state of decomposition of the remains.
I just love the differences of days of being like, no, I didn't see this 4-year-old for days before. Like, how do you not see a 4-year-old you live with for this long?
Well,
like
I don't know if he necessarily lives there. I think he just like comes and stays because he's just her boyfriend.
Yeah, but she's watching some of his kids. Like it's like, or his relatives at least. It's like, how do you not see a
he's definitely there
for
pretty
days?
often, right? Yeah. So after the attack, Brittany says that Jaylen placed young Sequoia in a trash bag and stored her remains in the house until the search was over. After the area near the home was searched, then they placed her remains in a trash bin at their very own apartment complex. And so far, both Brittany and Jaylen are arrested, but here's some interesting things. First, Brittany's bond, was set at $500,000, $500,000. Jaylen's is only $50,000. So that leads me to believe that they got some other evidence. They got something. Maybe Jaylen has an alibi for the time of death that they have already established. Maybe Jaylen wasn't there at all because they have a really good idea. They know when this baby was killed. They know. Okay, so and if Jaylen had a good alibi, maybe he was at work. Maybe I don't know, but for whatever reason, his bond is 10% of what Brittany's bond is. So they know something about Brittany. And I feel the same way too. I feel like Brittany's full of shit. Like you can look at her pictures. She's stone cold, no remorse. It's like, you lost a daughter. Like if you didn't do it, like how are you not distraught? Like I don't.
Yeah, you so quickly, it was such a quick turnaround of, I was asleep watching the kids.
Yeah.
And then the door was open and she got gone.
Yeah.
And then they find the child. It's like, oh no, he beat her. It was him. He beat her to death. Mm-hmm. Like it's such a quick turn of like.
Well, she had to explain what was obvious.
Yeah.
Right? She had to figure out a way to explain to fit the evidence now because they had evidence. I guess they thought that the trash was going to run and her body would be carried off to the landfill and that'd be that. I guess that,
so,
you know, that's what they thought. But Brittany faces charges of child neglect, abuse of a corpse, and false offense reporting. A mental evaluation was ordered during a court hearing in late July, and there's yet to be anything about it. She is trying to get the insanity plea, though. That's really, in my opinion, that's her only case. And Jaylen is only being charged at this time with false offense reporting. So,
yeah, it's kind of one of those things like maybe he was telling whatever story he was told to tell.
He's trying to cover for her, man. He's trying to cover for her. There's also a video of him.
Yeah, but then she threw you under the bus.
I know, right? There's also a video of him going to a neighbor. It's a Ring doorbell, and he's going to a neighbor asking if they have seen Sequoia and basically admitting that she's lost. And he looks weird, but he does kind of look distraught a little bit. I don't know. You just have to see it for yourself. It's a weird video. But Brittany's attorney is claiming that she's suffering from battered woman syndrome and that she was just another one of Jaylen's victims. She had no bruises on her whatsoever. Yeah. She looked perfectly fine. Hobson remains in jail, though, anyways, Jaylen does, on his $50,000 bond. In Samuel's case, he also faces charges unrelated to the case that involved trespassing, possession of marijuana, and possession of a firearm. So that's the only other charges that he is under right now. I guess there was already a warrant out for him for these things. But again, trespassing, possession of weed, and a firearm
doesn't lead to child murder.
That is so far away from child murder.
Yeah, does not indicate child murder.
Yeah, but Hobson's attorney says that he does believe that Jaylen will face more charges in the coming months, but he hasn't really expanded on that at all. Like, do you mean like in regards to Sequoia or in these other charges? He was really unclear.
Yeah, maybe some culpability, like the falsifying reports, some of those things. Right. But
the district attorney said they're still actively investigating the case and would not rule out increasing charges on both Jackson and Hobson. Now, this story has also not been covered hardly at all. And the stuff I saw about it is either super shocking or it's just wrong. There's a lot of information out there saying that Sequoia was dismembered and placed in multiple garbage bags. I don't know where the hell that shit came from, but that is not in any viable news source that I could find. Even family have been interviewed and things like that, and there's nothing of that sort has been mentioned. And I really think that is a no-brainer. If that child was dismembered, it's like, lock this bitch up, right?
And you would have seen a lot more about it.
There'd be a lot more evidence in the home and whatnot, even if it was 3 weeks before.
And you would probably see a lot more news coverage about it. I mean, honestly, if that was the reality of it, and that's awful to say, but if there was a dismembered child put around an apartment, you would see a lot more articles about that than a simple, a deceased child. It's just
no doubt.
It's an awful reality, but that you would see more of it.
Absolutely. So I will be following this case, guys, as it unfolds. I may do a full Strange and Unexplained, just depending on how it turns out. I mean, obviously, if it's cut and dry, we won't do it on there, but maybe we'll do a full episode about it on True Crime Guys if any more information comes out that's really changing what we pretty sure we know right now. And I feel like if Jalen is involved, he's involved in the cover-up and possibly the disposal.
Yeah,
I really don't think he killed this little girl. I really don't. I think her mother did it because she has special needs and she was tired of taking care of her.
She was it seems like a
selfish because
like I wanted to say Casey Anthony the whole time, but it's just like, well, they're not gonna let that slide again. We already saw what happened when one lady killed her daughter and tried to cover it all up. They're not letting that happen again.
No, freaking Diane Downs, man. There's some bad ones, but yeah, and there's also her family that lived in that area. They were all like, I wish she would have said something, if she didn't want this child or whatever, or if the child was in danger, we would have took her. And it's like, and that just goes to show that, if Brittany did this, she did it out of pride. She didn't want to admit that she was a bad mother. She didn't want to admit that she couldn't handle it anymore. And she didn't want someone else raising her child and making her feel like a piece of shit.
Yeah,
and so she got rid of her in another way.
I'm thinking also, it's like if you live that close with so many of your family members in the same apartments with you, right around you, it's if your boyfriend is abusing you that regularly and abusing your children,
they're gonna say something, right?
It's like they're gonna know, they're gonna see. You could have somebody right there. It's like you have that safety net around you, and if nobody is noticing you being abused or bruises on you or changing your behavior, like. If none of her family is like backing that, then it's like, how are you going to hide that for that long? How are you going to pretend like that's not real?
Exactly. Well, all right, guys. Like I said, that's all we have so far on this case, on this Sequoia Samuels case. I really think it's going to be a little more coverage on this. I really do. I feel like it's kind of picking up speed. There's not a lot out there on this case either. Like I said, that's why I really wanted to cover it for you guys, get it out here, get it in the books. And, like I said, I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on it in the future. And we'll see you next week with a regular episode on the free platform.
Yeah, we need to get some shenanigans going here. It's
been
so dark so long.
That's right.
It's been a dark day.
All right. Keep creeping, guys. We'll see you.